decoding you, or decoding yourself, decoding me, decoding anybody. How do we do that? And the reason that I asked that question, guys, very seriously, even though I've got my usual happy, positive smile on my face, the reason that I asked the question is this. Sometimes you know that what you're doing is counterproductive to your progress, yet you still go ahead and do it anyway. I used to love hearing Bob Proctor talk about this when he was at school and in the Navy. He says his commanding officer was, Proctor, you shouldn't have done that. He'd say, I know, sir. He'd say, but why did you do it then? He said, I don't know, sir. Kind of like that. And we've all experienced that kind of behavior before. So we absolutely know that we should be taking a different course of action to the one that our programming takes us down. And sometimes it's very, very hard to resist this. And then we look back, we join up the dots and we go, damn, or words to that effect, I wish I'd not done that. So why do we really do this? Well, it kind of starts, I call this 4x4 because I'm going to give you 2 models of 4 here. It starts with awareness, okay? So if you lack awareness, you're in a state of what we call unconscious incompetence. Unconscious incompetence. Now, as well as being quite tricky to say, what that means is essentially you don't know what you don't know. You are unaware. Now, I like to think of awareness over here and its polar opposite over here, which is, yes, you're right, it's unawareness, but it's also ignorance. And we don't want to be in a state of ignorance, because ignorance is not bliss. Ignorance is actually bondage, because until you're aware of something, you're ignorant of it. And if you're ignorant of it, you're going to stay stuck there. I'll 99.99% guarantee that. So we need to move up a level in our conscious awareness. And this is what we call conscious incompetence. So we're still rubbish at this task or this type of behavior or action, but at least we're now aware of it. So we've moved from the state of ignorance over here to a state of awareness. We're not any good at it, but we're now aware of it, and we now know that if we want to, if we choose to, because this is all about personal choice, but if we really want to, or we can do something about it, we can educate ourselves, we can buy a course, we can take classes or seminars, read a book, whatever it may be, and then we can become more competent at it. So we move from a state of incompetence to a state of competence. So this third state of competence is what we now call being a conscious competence. But you do need to go, if you choose, to another level, which I'll talk about in a moment. And here's why. Because conscious competence means, yeah, you know about it. Yeah, you've educated yourself. You've taken the course. You've got competent and proficient at it. But it's not second nature yet. I'm going to give you a personal example. When I was a kid growing up in the late 1970s or early 80s, we had that seminal moment, didn't we, when we saw Enter the Dragon with Bruce Lee. Now, I moved from a state of ignorance about martial arts even existing to a state of unconscious competence. I was aware of it, and I became obsessed with it. So I went to my local karate club. There wasn't a kung fu club or a Wing Chun club, but there was a karate club. And I trained. I went every day. I was obsessed with it. I was buying fight magazines. You get the idea. You may have been like that about something yourself. So here's the thing. Within about 3 years, which is quite a quick space of time, I became a brown belt with 1 or 2 tags. So I was literally one tag on my brown belt from getting my black which I never got, and that's another story. And that wouldn't have, I was as good actually at katas and sparring as some of the black belts in my dojo. And, you know, in controlled sparring conditions there, I could beat some of those guys, not all of them, but some of them, yeah? The competency was about equal. Now, I happened to go out one night. I was a big guy at that time, and, you know, there wasn't all this ID thing back in the day. So, you know, 16 or 15 or 16, I could go out and I could have a couple of pints on a Friday night with some friends of mine that were older. Absolutely no problem at all. Isn't that shocking and naughty behavior nowadays, eh? But as I say, there wasn't the sort of whole thing about ID back then. So I got on the wrong side of a fight, basically. Had a disagreement with somebody, and I came second, even though I was almost a black belt. And this guy definitely was not almost a black belt. I know him, and we're friends again now. But I'm telling you, when this guy hit me, it was probably around about 1980 or 81. I think actually I can anchor myself back. I can still feel it. This guy hit me so hard, and it landed clean, and I wasn't expecting it, and I went on to do flat on my back. What he wasn't expecting was I've got a very good chin, and I got up again. But that's another. I don't want to go down the whole fight scene thing. Yeah, this definitely wasn't Brad Pitt Fight Club. The point is, why did I, as an almost black belt, come second with a guy who was quite a proficient street fighter? Well, here's why. He had reached a level of mastery. He was what we call an unconscious competent. In other words, unlike me, you'd have to think, right, to take this guy on, I need to assume this position and I need to block it. I'm thinking through it. I'm not unconsciously competent. You're unconsciously competent at breathing. At least I hope you are anyway, yeah? You don't think about it. The only time we think about breathing is if we're medically ill and we're struggling to breathe, or if we exert ourselves for any sort of reason and get out of breath. Then we become consciously aware of our breathing. Otherwise, it just runs on autopilot. This guy, his name was Nigel, by the way, he was an unconscious competent at fighting. You know, he was pretty good at it. So that's the 4 levels of mastery. We have unconscious, incompetent. We don't know what we don't know. We move to a state of awareness. We are a conscious incompetent. Then we move to a state or level of competency at whatever it might be. So we're now consciously competent. And if we really practice and repetition, we become unconsciously competent at it. We achieve mastery. I do say with something like a particular move in kicking a football in a certain way, or a punch, if you're a boxer or martial artist, that at least 10,000 repetitions are required to hardwire that movement and the unconscious competency into your central nervous system and subconscious. So that's those 4 levels. But I said there's 4 more levels, okay? And these correlate very nicely with the first 4 levels, although they're very different as well. So just have a little think about this. The way or the states that people live their life in is very, very interesting to me. It's kind of a lifelong study, certainly the last 20 years or so, into patterns, human behavior, why people do what they do when they already know what they know, and all that stuff, yeah? So the first level of this other model of 4 here is what we call to me. Now, to me is what James Redfield in the book Celestine Prophecy, which I couldn't recommend enough that you read. It's a great book, written in the middle 90s, kind of an adventure book, kind of spiritual as well. Very, very interesting book. And he talked about people who live their lives in what he called a victim drama. So this is why we call it to me, because there are people, this might resonate with you. It resonates with me. I used to be like this quite a bit. to me means that your model of the world is that there's this great big conspiracy going on, everybody's against you, and therefore everything happens to me. You're in a very low and negative vibration, by the way, when you live your life in this type of a state. So, just like the other 4 levels, you can advance up and you can get into a state, and you can stay there if you wish, this is all choice, that we call by me. So by me very simply means if it's to be, it's up to me, and you roll your sleeves up and you get on and you do the work. Well, of course, that's a great thing, but people who live permanently in this state of by me, these are the types of people who get very high stress levels. Yeah, they're very serious people. They go somewhere and they have a sense of humor bypass operation, and they're very serious, they're very stressed, they become workaholics. They just think that they've got to work all the time, most of the time. There are exceptions to every rule, but generally this is how somebody who lives in a state of by me lives their lives. And oftentimes, after 10, 15, 20 years or more of living in this state, they may get the house on the hill, they may get the Rolls Royce or the Ferrari, whatever it is, the villa in Spain, and a big pile of money in the bank. But when they've climbed to the top of Success Mountain, as my good friend Peter Sage calls it, they don't like the view when they get there. Because when they look back or look down, they'll see a failed marriage. They'll see kids who only show up and only speak to them when they need some of your hard-earned money. They'll see friendships. They'll see business opportunities. They'll see all sorts of things. And then they might start living in a state of regret. They also might see detrimental health and nutrition behaviors given the lifestyle. These guys believe that if they stop for a minute, the whole world will stop. It's like there's a giant pause button somewhere and they will stop. You know, I have a friend of mine, we're still very good friends. This guy is a very successful guy. His net worth is probably north of 100 million euros. He lives in Monaco. He's an English guy, and I did some consultancy work for him some years ago. And one morning I got up and I was doing this work in Southeast Asia. And one morning I got up and I got a raft of emails from this guy, and I could see, looking at them, that these had been sent around about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. And I said to him in an email back, I said, "Don't you ever sleep?" And he sent me this reply back. He said, "When money sleeps, I'll sleep," which I thought was it's kind of a cool answer at the time. But here's the thing. This guy had people, he had CEOs, he had the full C-suite of people, right? He had junior staff for arranging travel and all sorts of things, because he got quite a big group, as you might imagine. There was well over 150 people, employees and associates in his business at the time, and yet he would get involved and literally confuse the living daylights out of everybody in getting £100 or $100 ticket from one place to another on an Air Asia flight. And I personally experienced that, you know, and then other people, the travel planner didn't do that because he said that, and because he's a micromanager, yeah? Because he's obsessed with just knowing the whole picture and controlling everything. And although he's successful, he was very stressed out. So, you know, this is not a great way to be. So where do we go from by me? Well, where we go from by me is to a place called through me. Through me. This is the third state in this second model of 4. And through me really is a much better place to be. Now, you still have to work. You still have to take positive, affirmative actions. You have to make decisions. So you do have to do quite a bit of by me, but nowhere near to the extent, maybe 20, 30, 40% maximum of that type of buy me behavior. And then you just sit back and you delegate and you trust people, you trust in the process, you trust that what you've put out into the universe will be returned to you and all that good stuff. And a good way to sort of know that this will happen and to have faith in this type of process is to ask yourself these questions, yeah? Are there any straight rivers in life? No. If you see a perfectly straight stretch of water, that's called a canal. That's man-made. Are there any straight trails in life? No. If you see a straight pathway or road, that has been made by man. I think it was the Romans who first came up with the idea of straight roads so they could see their enemies coming or something like that, yeah? But you get the idea. So we are subjects. We are an expression of nature. We are an expression of higher power, which is nature. So actually, we got to know that our best operating system is through nature or through ourselves. That's why it's called through me. So yes, do the work. Yes, do your due diligence, get all your ducks in a row, and then let it go. Just let it go and trust that what you've done will come back to you. So that's the third state, through me. So we've got to me, where everything just happens to you and you're a complete victim. We've got by me, where you're working 27 hours a day and the world stops if you stop. And we've got through me, where we're a lot more relaxed. Yes, we do the work, but then we trust in the process. We put it out to the universe. And then the fourth state is one that I probably will never reach, and I hope you do, but you know, it's one of those, isn't it? And this is what we call ASME. And ASME is when you are perfectly aligned with your purpose, with your higher power, and you live a completely Zen existence. So I think this is what Zen Buddhist masters might call oneness. Okay, we don't really need to worry too much about that. So I'd like you to think about this, and I'd encourage you on both of those models to really think about them. Take out a pad and pen, or perhaps even speak into a recording app on your phone and identify, try and step back out of yourself and identify where you are. What type of person are you in? What state do you live in most of the time? And hey, if it serves you and you like it and you're not too stressed about it, carry on. All I'm doing here is sharing a few ideas and philosophies and methodologies to help you be the best version of you. I'm Steve Q. Nothing happens anywhere without a sale or some good philosophical stuff like this. I'll see you on the next one.